your life.
8 weeks ago, a lot of you signed a check to the IRS that probably made you sick. But here's what nobody's telling you. The size of next April's check is being decided right now, today, this summer, whether you're paying attention or not. So here's my promise to you. The tax code is not your enemy, or at least it does not have to be your enemy. I look at it as a roadmap. It's a guide to actually walk you through how to pay less tax. Do you know there's like 7,000 pages of tax law, and there's one line that says all income's taxable unless we say it isn't, and another line that says nothing's deductible unless we say it is. And there's a few charts and tables tell you how much tax to pay, but literally over 6,900 pages is simply an instruction guide to paying less tax. So I'm going to show you tonight how to legally cut your tax bill in 2026 by up to 30 to 40% with the 6 months you've got left in the year. Later, I'll walk you through one structure decision that a typical business client would keep an extra $50,000 to $75,000 on $500,000 of income, and why most CPAs never bring it up. Now, for those who stay until the end of our webinar tonight, you'll get access to a Tom bot. Yes, you'll actually get Tom's GPT. So this is AI where you can ask me questions in the form of an AI tool. But here's my rule for tonight. Everything I teach you works inside the next 6 months, or I'm not teaching it. So this is real stuff that we can do. Now, most of you know, I've got over 40 years as a CPA. I was in the Ernst & Young National Tax Department teaching CPAs around the country and actually creating courses. I've been an adjunct professor at Arizona State University where I created a new course in their Masters of Tax program. I'm the Rich Dad Advisor for Tax and Wealth Strategies and Robert Kiyosaki's personal CPA. And of course, probably best known for writing the best-selling book, Tax-Free Wealth, which you see behind me, and a few other books that you might see if you look closely. So I was in Washington, D.C. in 1986. That was the biggest tax law change we'd had in many, really since 1954. That was the biggest tax law change since 1954. I've looked at every single tax law change since then, including the 2017 Act, which was another big change, and the 2025 Act, which was another big change and made permanent a lot of the temporary changes in 2017. But here's what's different about this one. For the first time in my career, most of the incentives in the 2025 bill are permanent. There's not okay, we're going to wait and see, and they're going to phase out like there was in 2017, right? 2017, really the only thing made permanent was the corporate tax rate. Everything else was temporary. It was all set to expire at the end of this year. So now we have a new tax law. Now, most CPAs treat taxes like a bill. I'm going to teach you how to treat it like a map. And when you follow the map, you don't just pay less. The same moves that lower your taxes are the moves that build wealth. I'm going to say this again. The same moves that lower your taxes are the moves that build the most wealth. That's not an accident. It is intentional. It's how the tax law was written, and it's why the tax law was written the way it was. The tax law is not just there to raise revenue. Basically, you have two choices. Now, I'll tell you a choice you don't have first, and that is whether you're a partner with the government. You are a partner with the government, but you have two choices about what kind of partner you are. You can be a silent partner and pay a lot of tax, or you can be an active partner, do what the government wants you to do and pay a lot less tax. What I'm going to show you is what the government would like you to do. Okay, now you can choose whether to do it or not. That's up to you. You have to decide, am I willing to take the actions that the government requires me to take in order to reduce my taxes? So one of the first questions I have for you, and you can you can put this in the chat or think about this. How many of you would really like to pay a lot less tax this year? And my next question is, why? Why do you want to pay less tax? Some people go, you know what? I just hate paying taxes. I don't think the government does anything good with it. That's fine if that's your motivation. But I'm going to tell you, that's not my motivation. My motivation is I find that when I pay less tax, I build more wealth. And in fact, I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. The more income you earn, the more tax you pay. The more wealth you build, the less tax you pay. Once again, the more income you earn, the more tax you pay. The more wealth you build, the less tax you pay. So this is really about building wealth. And it's not just because you have more cash flow. So of course, the fastest way to put money in your pocket, increase your cash flow, is to reduce your taxes. You'll do some of that tonight, but I'll show you a way by the end of tonight's webinar. I'll show you how you can do it in a single day, reduce your taxes by anywhere from 10 to 40%. I'll show you easily how to do it in 2 to 3 months. Okay, working with a qualified advisor. So let's talk about the problems that people have with taxes. Now, I don't have a lot of problems. I understand the tax law. I've spent 40 plus years learning the tax law. I read the tax law every day. I work with clients every day, and I work with our advisors in our CPA franchise every single day. So I get it. But most people, if you're like most people, you treat taxes like a bill, not a map. And your structure probably proves that. Now, here's the mid-year change, mid-year move that you need to make. The new law with the corporate tax rate and the pass-through deduction, they're permanent, okay? So rather than being a temporary bet, we now have a permanent bet, and we have choices, okay? So I want to kind of walk through the different choices. I'm going to give you what the choices are when it comes to how to set up your business and your investing, right? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the tax entities and the legal entities because they are not the same. This is a big difference that you've got to understand because you probably got an attorney or some business that kind of told you need an LLC and you don't even understand what you're doing. I find that when I teach my classes in my office, I find that a lot of people do not understand what their attorney got them into. So let's look at tax entities. We have a partnership. We have an S corporation. We have a C corporation. Okay, so we have a partnership, S corporation, C corporation. We have a sole proprietorship. And then we have trusts. That's what we have. Now, partnership can be either general or limited. Legal, we also have a partnership. We have a corporation. We have an LLC, limited liability company. We have a sole proprietorship. And we have trusts. Okay. So what do you see? Well, certain things are the same, right? Partnership, they're the same. But corporation, sometimes I'll ask somebody, how are you formed legally? And they'll say, I'm an S Corp. That's not a legal designation. A corporation is a legal designation, but an S Corp is not a legal designation. Or they'll say, I'll ask them how they're taxed. And they'll say, I'm taxed as an LLC. Well, an LLC, you don't see any LLC on the tax side, do you? There's no such thing as an LLC in the tax law. So what does that mean an LLC is? An LLC is either a partnership, an S corporation, a C corporation, or sole proprietorship. Can't be a trust, but can be any of the others. So understanding these basics, automatically, it changes how much tax you pay. Okay. So for example, let's say you have $500,000 of income and you have the wrong structure. And because you have the wrong structure, you're paying on that $500,000, you're paying $150,000 of tax. Now we change the structure. By structure, I mean the entity, right? And I'm talking about the tax entity, not the legal entity. So we change it and we change that entity, and all of a sudden it's not 150,000, it's 100,000. See, because the first question when it comes to tax planning is, how do you make your money? How do you make your money? Well, I make my money in my business. Okay, but that doesn't tell me from a tax standpoint how you make your money. Well, I make my money in an S corporation. I make my money in a C corporation. I make my money as a sole proprietor. These are very different tax consequences. It's really easy to overpay your taxes by 10, 15, 20% before you ever get into deductions or credits or any other, the tactics that people talk about. Before you get to any of that, by fact of using the wrong entity, you are paying more tax. Absolutely paying more tax. I'll tell you the worst one. In my mind, here's the worst one. Now, my legal friends would say a general partnership would be worse. From a legal standpoint, it probably is. But from a tax standpoint, sole proprietorship. What does that mean? It means you file your tax return on a Schedule C. It's on your 1040. You pay high self-employment tax. In fact, let me show you exactly how I would show this if I were speaking with Robert Kiyosaki. I would use his cash flow quadrant. I'd say, look, as Robert says, there's 4 ways to make money: as an employee, self-employed, big business, or professional investor. How much tax you pay depends a lot on how you make your money. If you're an employee and you make a good salary, you're going to probably pay 40%. But if you're self-employed, if you're a sole proprietor, you're going to pay up to 60%. That's the $150,000. If you're a big business owner, you could pay as little as 20%. A third of what you're paying as a sole proprietor. A third. As a professional investor, you could be paying 0. Well, let's just talk about you're making your money as an employee or a small business. Here's the cool thing. The tax law is fair. I will go on the record all the time. The tax law is fair. It's fair because anybody doing the same thing the same way gets the same result. And it doesn't matter how big you are. So that means that this small business could also pay 20% with the right structure. So mid-year move, review your structure in July, and let's change it for the rest of the year. Let's not be paying all these extra taxes. Let's reduce our tax rate from 60 to 20 or 60 to 40. Well, would be 30, 60 to 30. It should not ever be more than 30%. So 60 to 30, cut it in half. Cut that 150 into 75,000. Okay, how do we do that? Simply by the entity. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, you don't believe the tax law could favor you. You think it just happens to you. So, as I said, 95% of the tax law is incentives. The tax law is fundamentally a series of incentives for business owners and investors. You see it right here on the screen. Business owners and investors. But these business owners could get this result. So if it's incentives, then that goes to our next question. What are you going to do with your money? Right? So for example, let's say I'm going, okay, I like being in business. Okay. So let's take, we've got 4 asset classes. Okay. So I'm going to draw a financial statement here. And here's our income statement, our expense, our assets, and our liabilities. Okay, so we have 4 asset classes. First of all, we have business. Business is the number 1 asset class. It is the class that the tax law favors the most. So what am I going to do with my money? I'm going to put it back in my business. Well, that's great, because here's what happens. Look, the average person gets money in, spends it, pays tax on it. But a business owner has 2 ways to not pay tax. Either they can put it back into their business as an expense. We call those deductions, right? And pay no tax. Or they can put their money back into their business, buying assets, and pay no tax. Tax law doesn't care. Don't care. Assets or expenses, they're the same thing, by the way. An expense is simply, the purpose of an expense is to produce revenue, income. An expense just produces it over a shorter period of time than an asset. That's the only difference between an expense and an asset, by the way, for business purposes. So what could you do? Well, I could buy an asset, and I could buy, let's say I buy an asset in my business and I get bonus depreciation. You go, well, wait a minute. I'm not in business. Okay, well, let's look at the next asset class, real estate. Okay, can I get bonus depreciation on real estate? Yeah, I can get bonus depreciation on real estate too. So I could get my income in, I could buy real estate, and I get bonus depreciation. And the goal is to not pay tax on the income I earned that made the investment. What about commodities like energy? Okay, could I take my money and put it into energy and get a deduction? Yeah, I get what's called intangible drilling costs, which is roughly equal to bonus depreciation. It's actually a little more than bonus depreciation. Okay, or let's say I go, you know what, I'm going to put it into paper assets. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to take that money, I'm going to put it in here into a what I call a qualified plan, qualified retirement plan. Okay, and I'm going to pay no tax. So I don't care. I'm agnostic when it comes to your asset class. I'm telling you that you can take your income as long as you invest it the way the government wants you to. Okay. See, they don't care which asset class you invested into. What they do care is that you don't just go spend it. If you, to be more clear here, if you save it or you spend it, you pay tax on it. If you invest it, you don't pay tax, right? And it doesn't matter which asset class, as long as you understand how the laws work in those asset classes. So here's your mid-year move. Think about, what am I going to do with my money from an investment standpoint? I can go put it in the stock market. That's fine. But if I don't do it the right way, I'm going to pay tax on that money, and I'm going to have a lot less money in my account than if I do it the right way. in the qualified plan. Problem number 3, no one's driving the car. You go, hey, CPA is fine. You know, I ask people, well, who's doing your tax planning? Well, my CPA handles that. Really? Just as a word of caution, if your CPA says they're handling that, they're lying. They can't handle it. So let's say you buy a mug, coffee mug, and you ask me, is this deductible? My answer is, I don't know. I don't know whether it's deductible. But you could ask a better question. Question is, how do I make this mug deductible? Now I can answer that question. But let's examine that question. It's not, how can you, Tom, the CPA, make it deductible? It's, how can I, the taxpayer, make it deductible? So my job is to teach you how to make it deductible. It's your job to actually make it deductible. You need to know how. I get it, but I can't do it for you. So if I hear anybody say, my guy handles that, my CPA handles that, she does a great job. She handles it all. She handles the filing, but only you can reduce your taxes. Your CPA cannot reduce your taxes. Only you can. Now, I look at it as a partnership, but it's a partnership with who? I mean, think about it. You have your wealth advisor. Now, I've been having this discussion with wealth advisors lately. I have a bone to pick with a lot of them. They think they know everything. They think they know taxes. They think they know how to build wealth. They know the stock market. They know real estate. They know everything. They know law. I'm going, what if instead, and then your attorney says, the attorney, they don't ever pretend to know this other stuff. But what they'll say is, hey, that's not my problem. That's your accountant's problem. That's not my problem. That's your financial planner's problem. What about the life insurance people? Okay. Here's the problem. You've got all these different people doing pieces. Who's putting it together? I had a conversation with our advisors, our tax advisors today in our franchise. And I said, look, the problem is that people confuse tactics with strategies. A tactic is something like I'll give you in my book, Tax-Free Wealth. The Augusta rule, rent your vacation home out or rent your house out for 14 days or less during the year, and you won't have to pay taxes on the income. That's a tactic. It's a good tactic. Employ your children. That's a tactic. It's a good tactic. What's a strategy? Well, by definition, a strategy is a long-term plan of action intended to accomplish a specific purpose. This is why I'm going to go back to the original question I asked you. Why? Why don't you want to pay? Why do you want to pay fewer taxes? Now, if your answer was, I want more cash flow, it's a good answer. But I'm going to ask you the next question. Why? Why do you want more cash flow? Well, I want to live a better life. Great. Then you're done. I want to build wealth. Now you're not done. I want to retire when I'm 40. You're not done. I want to retire when I'm 50. You're not done. I want to retire and not have to live under a bench and worry about what the 4% rule when I retire. You're not done. A strategy is this long-term comprehensive plan of action. I think there are some great tactics, but I think most of the good tactics you're going to find, whether it's, especially if you're finding them on social media or YouTube, you can find them in my book, Tax-Free Wealth. It's $25 on Amazon. Okay. You can find those tactics there. You don't have to hire somebody for the tactics, but if you want a strategy, that's a whole different world. Now you're talking about, how do I bring my different team members together? See, I was having this conversation with a financial planner just yesterday. I said, here's what I'd like to see in a financial planner, because he was trying to sell me, right? He wants me to work with him. I said, I want somebody who does what they're good at. I don't want somebody who does what I'm good at. I don't need somebody to do what I'm good at. I'm good at it. So I don't need a financial planner to tell me taxes. I need a good tax professional, CPA, to help me with my taxes. I don't need a CPA to tell me what the law is and what kind of entity I should set up for legal purposes. I need a lawyer for that. Well, wouldn't it be nice if your CPA, financial planner, and your lawyer all work together towards the same end, which is your financial success? That's where a strategy comes into play, because now you've got a plan of action and team members who can help you carry out that plan of action. See, every strategy needs a runway. Every tactic needs a runway, but every strategy needs a runway too. Entity changes, plan setups, purchases, documentation. A December conversation is bookkeeping. It's looking over your shoulder. A July conversation is strategy. I hear people talk about year-end tax planning. They should call it year-end tax tricks and tips, because it's not comprehensive planning. It can't be. It's too late. You can't, in November, you can't be investing your money into real estate that is going to close in December and get it done such that you get the best tax results. Not going to happen. You got to start it now. July is the time. Now, in perfect world, January is the time. January's 6 months past. So rather than wait till next January, let's talk about now. There's still time. You get to November, your time's run out. So here's the problem. The strategy your team never coordinated is the one you end up paying for next April. That's the one you end up paying for next April. So here's your three problems: structure, entity, your belief, what I call the belief gap, which is why you hesitate, half implement, delay, cost you 20 or 30% in taxes every single year. I don't believe it. It can't possibly be true that I could reduce my taxes and build my wealth. That's a belief gap. Now, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not. I'm asking, we're going to have three people are going to speak to you in the next hour and a half, and they're all three going to be at our conference in July. Listen to them. See what you think. Do they make any sense? So I didn't want to just bring you my take tonight. I've done that before. I'm passionate about reducing taxes to increase cash flow and build wealth. I'm passionate about that. But I want you to hear from three other people that you may not have heard from before at all. And they live this every single day. And they each have their own specialty. They each have their own area. Okay? So watch how each one uses the roadmap, okay, to back up what I've just talked to you about. Okay, each one's going to do that. So I'm going to start with my friend, David Hanson. David is really interesting guy, because David is one of our franchisees, but he's also a business owner in his own right, an extraordinarily successful business owner, and actually our first non-CPA franchisee. Okay, and David, in July, you're going to talk about 6 disciplines every entrepreneur must master. I'm not going to ask you to go through the 6 disciplines now. We're going to do that in July. But I want you to give a little of your background and why you asked me if you could speak at our conference in July.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me on this evening as well. And in terms of my background, I'm a multi-company business owner. I never went to business school. My current businesses my primary business is actually an aviation insurance agency. So it's very specialized, and we do insurance for basically anything that flies: airplanes, helicopters, any type of aircraft, airports, businesses like that. I'm based in New Hampshire, but we work with clients throughout the country. I also have a premium finance company that's ancillary to my insurance agency. And then I have some real estate. And then my most recent business is a franchisee of TFW Advisors. And that came about last year when I went to Tom's tax conference in July of 2025. And I've become even though I'm not a CPA, I've become a real tax nerd. I read Tom's book many years ago, soon after he published it. And, I followed him since then. And it was such a pleasure to get to know Tom and to work with him more recently. But as I mentioned, I didn't go to business school. I actually started exercise physiology in college. And when I moved to South Africa, and I was living there, I was studying at the University of Cape Town. And I met my wife, her name is Buddy, on a blind date when I was in my mid-20s. And she was in school studying, and she was studying business, and her passion, excitement for it was infectious. And it made me start thinking about my career. I was thinking of going into research and teaching at the university level. And I thought back as well to my grandparents on both sides of my family. My dad's side of the family was in insurance too. My grandfather had a successful insurance agency in the Florida Keys. My mom's family, her father had some businesses, and mother as well, in real estate. They had a grocery store and a construction company. And I thought about their success and what I was doing. I was like, what I'm doing now, although it's admirable career, it's not going to get me where I want to be. I'm not going to be able to have as much influence on people as I could in business, perhaps. So someone else told me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And then that just exploded my perspective on things. And I said, I want to go into business. So my first business was I bought a branch of a restaurant franchise. So your franchise is not my first franchise. I had a restaurant franchise way back in South Africa. And I always tell people, that was my MBA. That was my MBA, but learning by doing. I jumped in with both feet, and I at least had the sense to know that, to know what I didn't know, and that I needed the support of a franchise, and that was helpful. But boy, did I make mistakes. I made so many mistakes. And I eked out a living doing that. But the restaurant taught me stock control and inventory and human resources and customer relations and accounting principles, so many different things. So although I didn't get a lot of financial wealth from it, I got a ton of educational wealth. And we subsequently, after we got married, we decided to sell the business, move to the United States, and start our family here. And then when I moved here, I started talking to my dad about what my next business venture would be, because I knew I still wanted to stay in the business, but the restaurant wasn't the right one. And he told me, he said, David, insurance is the DNA of capitalism. Businesses wouldn't exist today without insurance. And it's really so true if you think about it. We couldn't take on the risk of business ownership, and banks wouldn't give us money to do anything if there wasn't insurance in place to protect the asset. So right. I started thinking about that. It'd be really rewarding to work with other business owners. And I decided to pursue a career in insurance. And it's so funny too, because when I was younger, one summer I worked at my dad's office and I hated it. I said, Dad, I never want to do insurance. It's so boring. And now I love it. And, I subsequently got my pilot certificate. I've always been passionate about aviation. Buddy, my wife, got me 3 gift certificates for flying lessons about 12 years ago. I've been flying ever since. And I have like 2,000 hours now and my commercial instrument rating. But so I was able to combine that passion, which I'll talk about passion more at the conference too, with my insurance experience that I had gotten working in the field a few years, to have to start the wonderful organization we have today. And we've grown it a lot over the last 11 years. And, it's so important what Tom is saying, and why I think it's important to go to this conference next month, because if you're gonna build a successful business, it's not just about being financially successful. It's also about creating a wealth and creating legacy. And to do that in the best, most efficient way, tax planning absolutely has to be part of it. Wealth planning absolutely has to be part of it. And I know, because I experienced it. When I started working with Wealthability and one of the network firms in Tom's group about 3 years ago, and it was huge. The return on investment that I got by changing my facts and by understanding what facts I could change and doing it in a way that felt good, because I knew it was legal, it was compliant, I wasn't gonna have to be worried about, is the IRS gonna audit me? I mean, yes, IRS could audit any of us, but if your facts are straight, it doesn't matter. You're still fine. Here's the information. You can see it. We've documented it. So
Yeah,
that's what I
let's talk
learned.
about that for a second, David. So this is one of the challenges I have with a lot of what people see on YouTube and social media, is that a lot of it is, people even ask me, how aggressive are you? And my response, and I'm actually going to put this up on the screen here, guys, if you can show my screen, is I have a different perspective about what's aggressive and what's conservative. David, you're really bringing this up here. As I look at it, I'm going, let's say that this is the entire tax law. And suppose you have, this much about it. Okay. So the extent of your knowledge is here. You think about it, what does that make everything over here? Makes it aggressive. So when I hear somebody saying, well, I want an aggressive CPA or tax advisor, I'm going, oh, you want somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. You want somebody to go outside of what they know. On the other hand, let's say that or your CPA knows this much of the tax law. Well, what does that make everything from here to here? Makes it conservative. Now, here's the great thing. Once you understand how the tax law works, and David used probably my most famous saying, which is, if you want to change your tax, you have to change your facts. Okay. But once you understand what facts you need to change, you don't have to be aggressive. You can be conservative, but you have to understand it. And your team has to understand it. So that's what I hear you saying, David, is look, you didn't have to worry about getting audited because you're with a team that understood the tax law and could figure out, okay, here's how to reduce my taxes without being outside of the lines of the law, right? Squarely within in what we'd call the four corners of the law.
That's exactly right. And I've seen, I've acquired a number of businesses, and I've looked at a number of businesses, even some that we haven't purchased, and especially among a lot of small business owners, I sometimes see people paying not much tax, but they're doing it in very questionable ways because they don't have the knowledge, and they're just taking a shotgun approach and praying that they don't get audited, and they're afraid of an audit because they know they haven't done things right. And that's a situation that you never want to be in.
Right. One thing that I have noticed over the years, and if you've ever had somebody tell you that they take a lesser amount of money for their services if you paid cash than if you paid with a credit card, it's probably a lot less than the credit card fees. So what is it? It means they're not reporting it on their taxes. Okay. This is called cheating. Everything we do and we teach is legal, ethical, and moral. Everything we do is legal, ethical, and moral. When I sign a tax return, if I were to sign David's tax return, David has to sign it under penalties of perjury. I have to sign it under penalties of perjury. Well, what happens if David signs it and there's a problem? Well, he's probably going to get a little leeway with the IRS because he's not a CPA. He's not a tax advisor. I'm going to get none. I get no leeway, which is why so many CPAs are so hesitant to take any deductions because they're going, wait a minute, I'm on the hook for this. Well, but if you're hesitant to take it because you don't understand it, and if you don't understand it, you shouldn't take it. I honestly believe that. If you don't understand the tax law, why are you doing things that you don't understand? But I believe that with investing too. Why are you doing things with investing you don't understand? I see so many people investing in things they don't understand. But what's fascinating to me, David, is that you came to the tax conference. That's great. But you were the only entrepreneur at that tax conference that there at the tax conference said, how do I become a part of this?
Exactly. And I think that, it's what you're doing is the way forward for CPA firms, because it's not just compliance. It's not just taking the information and filing return. It's that forward-looking strategy. And that's what people are going to need. I mean, we're going to eventually, yes, we're going to have AI and computers that can file a tax return, but they're not going to be able to look at the complex strategy and forward-looking planning that's necessary if you're looking to create wealth long-term and to create a lasting legacy.
Exactly. So what made you actually then take the leap and say, hey, I'm going to buy a franchise. I'm going to do something I know a little bit about, but I'm not even going to be doing the services because we require CPAs to do that. Why would you do that, David?
Well, that goes back to what I mentioned about passion. I'm a sort of person, like, I really embrace my passion strongly. And I love business. Like, you talk about asset classes, business is my asset class. And I will do some other things as well. Business is the primary one. And I love working with business owners. When in my insurance practice, my favorite clients to work with are the businesses we insure. And I love learning about what other people do in their businesses and strategizing. So what excited me is the opportunity to help other business owners like me in the same way that I was helped, and also learn about their businesses and strategize with them, and just be part of the larger business community. Because when people ask me what I am, I truly do believe that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not pigeonholed into being an insurance broker. That happens to be a business I love, and it's done very well for me. But I just love business, and be able to just sort of spread that mission with what the franchise is doing is just, aside from, I know it's going to be financially successful, it's also going to give me a lot of personal reward and satisfaction, which has great value also. And that's why I invest in the franchise.
I love that. I love that. You're very inspiring to me too, David. I've got to tell you, it's we're finding more and more business owners who now want to be franchisees. And David actually kind of is set the example of how to do it. He found a terrific CPA to be his partner in his franchise, absolutely spectacular. And they're moving quickly now, and is a little slow getting started, but that's how a new business is. Okay. But once you got started, you just kind of took off. So at our conference, you're going to talk about 6 disciplines that every entrepreneur must muster. Will you share one of them with us?
I will. Well, one of them is really important. I think a lot of people miss it, and that's why I'm going to talk about this one. It's risk management. And obviously, being insurance, risk management is really big for me. It also is large part of flying as a pilot too. And I think that, I mean, any business involves risk. I think we can all acknowledge that. I think sometimes what gets missed is that when you think about whether to embrace a risk, I mean, we know when you decide whether to take on a risk and open a business or do something that's a little bit risky, have a chance of success or failure. Sometimes what we miss afterwards is, once we make a decision to embrace a risk, which you need to do if you're an entrepreneur, after that, you need to then look at, how do I manage that risk? So the risky thing that I took on is a little bit less risky. And there are a number of ways to do that. One is that you can transfer that risk or some components of it by buying insurance products, of course, to protect your business from liability claims or property loss. You can transfer the risk contractually. Sometimes if you're working with somebody who's a tenant of yours, for example, and you have a real estate building and requiring them to have insurance, you're transferring some risk to them, or contractually making them responsible for some things, or using an independent contractor to provide services for you. You contractually transfer some risk to them. You can avoid risk. You may decide that what you're doing, the business you're doing, has some parts of it that are a little bit more risky and maybe has low reward for the risk, so you don't do it. A good example I can tell you is, a couple of years ago, we had a client who, they were a fixed space operator, and they did a number of different services for airplanes at the airport. They did fueling, and they would store airplanes, let them park there, and did some maintenance. They're thinking of adding a new line of business and doing aircraft detailing. Now, aircraft detailing isn't a service you can charge a ton of money for. It's a nice service. Your airplane gets nice and clean, like car detailing. But if you scratch a window or you have some little cosmetic mark on a jet, it can be very, very expensive. A windshield can be $50,000 to replace. So they were thinking of taking on the risk of potentially having some large damage claims for very little reward. And we talked through that and we decided, from a risk management perspective, the reward isn't worth the risk of this particular aspect of what you're thinking of doing. So they decided to avoid it. And it was my recommendation that they do that. So thinking through that carefully and then developing a plan to manage the risk throughout the various stages of your business evolution, I think is really, really important. But risk management does not mean being risk averse and avoiding risk. And sometimes I think another problem I see with people sometimes is that they're so afraid of risk that they get stuck in analysis paralysis and they can never make a decision. So I believe once you've weighed the risk and reward and you've decided the reward is worthwhile for the risk, you've got to embrace it and then manage it.
Well, so I'm a golfer. So there are one of my favorite golf courses is in Virginia, and there is a one hole where if you hit it in the right place, you can actually hit it from the tee to the green. Okay. And now you can be conservative and just hit it to the fairway, or you can be aggressive and hit it to the green. The question is risk reward. Is it worth it to try for the green? Because if I overshoot the green, I'm in the water. If I go to the right of the green, I'm in the water. So then you have to ask the question, okay, how confident are you in what you're doing so that the risk is less? So if I can, David, let me show one way I look at risk. You tell me what you think about this. I think that there's a number one way to reduce risk. And the number one way to reduce risk is through education.
Absolutely.
It's just like the previous diagram I had. Look, the more educated I am in tax, the more educated you are in tax, your partner is in tax, the less risk there is of being audited, of being denied the tax benefit. All of that risk goes down. So I look at it, I'm going, one of the things that absolutely goes down with more education is risk. I think about a race car driver right now. I think about what you're doing, David. I think it's very risky. I mean, I go up in my buddy's plane and I'm like, I would never do this. I mean, I'm happy to have him fly, but I would never do it because he's constantly getting instructions. He's constantly changing who he's getting instructions from. Right. Because as you fly, you have to go to it. There's a new control tower, right? So you're constantly getting new instructions. You've got weather coming up. You've got other airplanes. I mean, like we're coming in to Scottsdale and the air traffic controller, he goes, so there's this plane, and he described the plane. It's around you somewhere, be aware of it. And I'm just going, are you kidding me? I'm like, it's a plane. You have a crash. It's not like in a car, right? You're probably not going to survive that crash. So I'm going, I would want to have so much education and so many hours, like you've got 2,000 hours in the pilot seat, man, I'd want 2,000 hours before I ever took it up by myself. I mean, that's how I feel about flying plane. But you put me on a racetrack, I'm good. Okay. Because I love driving. I love to drive and I'm educated in driving. I've taken classes on how to drive and be able to drive. And I remember once going to the Bondurant school, and it's a very famous school in Phoenix, Arizona at Phoenix International Raceway. And I remember going to it and we're in a van and we're taking the curve at the oval at 90 miles an hour. I'm going, okay, so if a van can do that, the little race car they put me in, it should not be a problem. But what he showed us was, okay, you've got to go up here. You've got to, this is where you've got to be. Because if you come off, you're going to lose that. Okay. But I'm going to ask our presenters to put my whiteboard back up, because I'm going to go through the rest of this explanation here, because I don't think just risk comes down with education. One thing that I think David's found is another thing that comes down with education is taxes.
Absolutely.
Right? You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yes. Because when you're working with an advisor, like the advisors in our franchise network, you're also getting the education, because it's got to be a two-way street. Whereas as a business owner, entrepreneur, you have to do things. If you want to change your facts, there's active things you need to do as well. And to understand what your options are, you need to get some of that education. So that's something that TFW Advisors and Wealthability is great with, is the extensive educational resources you have. And the more you can educate yourself, the more you'll know what strategies to implement, and you'll understand the why behind it. And that's what's critical as well, I think, in reducing taxes and reducing risk. And I think that's also something that people need to be, in terms of investment, like you invest in different things financially, but you need to always invest in educating yourself, not just in tax strategy, but in many aspects of business. I'm always reading business books. I'm sure you are always educating yourself as well, Tom. In fact, I know you are. And that's something as an entrepreneur you have to do your entire career. And that investment is huge. I know Robert Kiyosaki talks about that a lot also.
So speaking of Robert, Robert and I and a few other people, we get together every week to study. So we're studying different videos. We're studying different books. We're constantly studying because, again, more education, less risk, lower taxes. But there are a couple of things that get better. That don't just, we don't just reduce, we actually increase. And one of those, I'd like you to talk about this, is return on investment, ROI. I think with education, your ROI is always going to go up while your risk comes down. The financial markets will tell you, in order to get a higher return on investment, you have to take on more risk. I think that if everything else is the same, that's true. But if you get the education, you can actually have less risk and a higher ROI.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, Tom. And that leads into discussion of like having some focus in like a specific industry area, because by having, a focus in one particular area, you're going to get really, really educated in that specific, area, that industry. And then you're going to know, like, you're going to be able to make decisions. You're going to be looking at a business you're looking to acquire and pretty quickly know whether the risk is too great or not, whether that acquisition, that deal makes sense. And you can only do that if you've gotten the education by really focusing in one area. And then your ROI is going to be much higher, because you're going to know this deal, I know I can get, 20% cash on cash return or whatever it may be. And I just know it because I have I've been doing this for a whole bunch of deals before this. And I know exactly what to look for, but it's an education experience that allows you to do that.
Yeah. Here's what I know. If I went out and bought an insurance company, I would have a lot of risk. My ROI, I might even lose money on it. But if I go out now, unless I bought a franchise from David Hampson, right? But if I go out and buy a CPA firm, I'm never going to lose money on that. I know that business inside and out, and I know I'm going to make money. So this is where that education becomes so important. People say all the time, and you might be worried, right? Because you say, well, wait a minute, the tax law encourages you to invest in business or real estate, or we're going to have somebody in energy on tonight. Well, okay, but I don't know those things. Well, then you'd better get educated if you're going to invest in them, because without the education, man, I just think your risk gets so high. I mean, you think about it. Do you know people, David, who have lost money in business?
Oh, absolutely. I know many people that have.
Yeah. Do you know people who've lost money in real estate?
Yes.
Do you know people who've lost money in energy?
Yes.
Do you know people who've lost money in the stock market?
Absolutely.
But do you know people who've made money in all of those?
Absolutely. Yes.
So see, it's not the investment, it's the investor The problem's never the investment. The problem's always the investor. And it tends to be a lack of education. Here's the last thing I'm going to show you. This is my favorite part. Some of you know I'm the youngest of 6 children. And when you're the youngest, you get told what to do pretty much every minute of every day when you're a kid, unless they're just ignoring you, which I was always okay if they ignored me because I didn't like being told what to do. But what I love is when I get more education, I find I have a lot more control. So if I go buy a CPA firm or I start a CPA franchise, okay, I've got a lot of control over that because I have a lot of education there. Okay. Now David took more risk than I would. David took risks that I would not need to take starting a CPA franchise because I understand CPA firm. David had to have an enormous amount of trust. And I'm very grateful to you, David, for trusting us with this. An enormous amount of trust in the team. But this is where I think you were talking about earlier, David. You were talking about how you've got to have specialists in the team. And like, even when you bought your restaurant franchise, you needed the expertise that franchise gave you. It wasn't just a good restaurant. You needed to make sure you had all the expertise to go along with running that business.
Oh, absolutely. And the same thing with the CPA, with the accounting firm, with CPA firm, is that for one, I needed to partner with somebody who was a CPA and had that specific experience. But beyond that, I still wouldn't have done it if it wasn't a franchise that I trusted. And, getting to know you and your team through working through Wealthability previously with my own businesses, and then getting a more extensive due diligence at your conference last year, that gave me that developed that trust that no, this is the right one, and I know I'm going to have the support behind me, and I felt confident that yes, I can make that decision to pull the trigger because I know the risk. There's a risk there, but I know that the chance of success is really high with the people behind it that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, it's about the team. And by the way, just to be clear, we're not selling franchises here. Okay. What I wanted you to see is I wanted you to hear from David, somebody who not a CPA, but started came into the franchise and why he came into the franchise, because it was everything I hear from you, David, and everything I get from you, and we've had long dinners together, is that you really wanted to give back something that you got a lot from when you went through it as a client. You wanted to be able to serve more people.
Exactly. And that's my primary motivation for doing it. Because I'm very successful in my other businesses. So I didn't need to do this to create more income, although I hope it's very successful. And the other thing that's also rewarding to me is my partner, my CPA partner, Ryan. He had been working in the firm he had been in for like 10 years. He was kind of stuck there and there was no movement upwards. And to be able to partner with him and then bring him into the fold and have him become a successful business person too, that's going to be hugely rewarding for me also.
I will tell you, it's already rewarding for me, David, because watching how much Ryan has grown and learned and progressed in a very short period of time. You're clearly a great partner, but it's you found the right guy. I mean, you really did, and that's part of the challenge, right? With any investment, is you've got to have the right team around you. You've got to make sure that you got a team that everybody wants to learn. One of the things I love about the franchise is, we were on our collaboration call today. What the number one thing people wanted more of from the franchise was more education.
Exactly. That was the theme of the whole conversation. Yeah.
It was the whole theme for an hour and a half is we want more education. I'm going, that is so cool to me that people, you're talking about very accomplished CPAs.
Yeah. And
they want more education. They're coming. We do a conference just for our franchisees. By the way, it's the day before the conference for entrepreneurs and investors that you guys are invited to, but we do one just for the franchisees because they want to learn. And we don't just do tax. We're going to do some tax, but we're also going to do some personal development. We're going to talk about sales. We're going to talk about business. So, we're always learning about multiple disciplines, and tax is just one of those disciplines that if you don't understand it, I think you're in trouble.
Absolutely. It's critical. And I'll talk about that as one of the 6 key disciplines, in July as well. But that's a really important one. A lot of people that go into business, they might be really good in a specific field, but they don't have that background in accounting, tax strategy, that if you're going to, once your business starts being successful, you really need to spend some time getting educated.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned over the years, I watch a lot of new business owners, and I've worked with thousands of them. And there's kind of there's a pattern. Okay. I'm always looking for patterns. That's kind of what I do for fun, is look for patterns. And which is all risk management is, right? You're looking for patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm talking to the choir here, but I've noticed a pattern, that is that a business owner or an investor gets successful. And come April 15th, because they were an employee, so they might have gone from the E quadrant to the I quadrant, or they want from the E quadrant to the S quadrant. And come April 15th, all of a sudden their tax preparer says, by the way, you owe $50,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I mean, that is, I've seen people who it took them years to pay that back, because they, all of a sudden they thought they had all this money.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they've never paid self-employment estimated taxes before. I had a friend actually who he had a business he started doing car repair, and he worked as an employee before, and the IRS ended up putting a lien on his house because he didn't know he had to put the money aside to pay it at the end of the year. No one taught him. He didn't get the education.
So the next person we got coming on is Corey Dow, and I've got to tell you a little bit about Corey. And David, you're going to want to meet Corey. Corey's going to be at both the franchise and the entrepreneur conference.
Good.
And Corey is an investment advisor, and he's pretty creative. And so do we have Corey ready for us, Josh? There he is. So
hey, how are you guys?
Before I let David go, Corey, David, Corey, you'll meet each other next month. But David, Corey is one of our franchisees. And he's also in the risk management business.
Oh, excellent. Well, look forward to meeting in next month.
Looking forward to it. I have my insurance license, but I've never sold an insurance product in my career. So
there you go. Thank you, David.
Thanks for having me on, Tom. David, good to meet you.
So Corey, it is, it's always great to have you. I mean, we have lunch every once in a while. You make yourself available, come out and have lunch with my wife and I. And I'm always, you're the one I go to, because my education is pretty strong in business, pretty strong in real estate, pretty strong in oil and gas, not very strong in the stock market. Okay. However, there's some real good opportunities in the stock market. In fact, right now, I've got a buddy who is a stock investor only. He goes, he's never been a buy and hold guy. And I want to ask you about this, Corey. He's never been a buy and hold guy until now. And he goes, I think with AI, I think that owning is going to be more important than doing. And I thought, what an interesting comment. So if you would give us a little of your background, Corey, and tell us a little bit about your expertise.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom. Hopefully this is value added for everybody that's listening today. I always enjoy working with you, Tom. And I have a team at UBS, and we have a handful of partners. We're located in Dallas, Denver, and Salt Lake City, but we've got clients all over the country. We tend to work with ultra high net worth individuals. So my ideal client is probably Tom's ideal client. It's somebody that has complexity and values advice. Typical clients generally have a net worth of over 25 million or at least 10 million to invest. So I think as a business owner, that's an aspiration. Most of my clients are first generation wealth. They were business owners or are business owners, and they tend to have a preference for, at some point in their life, maybe upgrading the team of advisors that they have. And Tom, you said something really important earlier. It is so critically important to have a good team. And that team needs to consist of, estate planning, a tax advisor, an investment advisor, and hopefully all three of those folks understand charitable planning if that's a desire. But you have to integrate this. So many clients try to focus on the current year and trying to save taxes in the current year. And, the real objective is trying to coordinate all those disciplines together in a good team and saving on taxes over decades, not just
the challenge I find is when people are like, it's like the year-end tax planning, right? When they do that, they tend to let the tax tail wag the dog. And I think the investment is the dog, and we should never let the tax tail wag the dog. Because if you're not making money in the investment, tax isn't going to make it up for you. I mean, tax is going to increase your return, but it will never cause a return. That I just want to be clear with that. Tax will increase your return on investment, but will never cause a return on investment. So, I hear like in Australia, I've got buddies in Australia, and they talk about negative gearing. Have you ever heard of that, Corey?
Yeah.
Negative gearing is where you lose money and you make it up on the tax side. I'm going, that makes no sense to me. I don't want to lose money. In the US anyway, we can make money and pay less tax. We don't have to lose money to pay less tax. And since our tax rate, maximum tax rate is roughly 40%, 53 if you're in California, but if it's roughly 40% for most people, you lose $1, the government only pays 40 cents of that. You still are on the hook for the 60 cents. So it makes no sense to do that whatsoever. And I love that you specialize in this. You don't pretend to specialize in anything else. And I love that. I was talking earlier with David about the financial planners who think they know everything about everything. And I'm a very big believer in specialists. Your CPA is probably more of a generalist than most of your advisors, but they should be a specialist in at least the tax area, in my view. And so we've got Corey, we've got you coming next month to specifically talk about the financial markets, and a lot going on in the financial markets. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about next month. We won't get too much into it, but tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about.
For sure. So, I spent about my original background was as an institutional consultant for Fortune 100 companies, and I had an expertise in equity compensation. So I got hired by a Wall Street firm to be a national co-head of equity compensation strategy, for mainly corporate executives. And I was trained there on tax strategy, trust and estate planning, charitable strategies, business transactions, oil and gas, you name it. And I did that for about 8.5 years, and I was head of the Southwest region. And then the financial crisis hit, and I realized that I was overhead and I needed to become an advisor and have my own clients. And so I did that in 2010. And so I'm a little nerdy. And so a lot of times clients will come to me and they'll say, hey, I have a problem. What opportunities are out there in the liquid markets? Now, Tom, you talked about this earlier. The best tax advantages and benefits are business owners, real estate investors, and oil and gas investors, period. But, a lot of folks that I work with have already gotten liquid, and they're saying, okay, what else can I do? I've got to sell this piece of real estate. Right. I'm going to generate a very large gain, or I have a concentrated equity position that I got from the sale of my business to a strategic buyer. And now I have a bunch of stock in a publicly traded company. How can I get diversification and defer that gain? Or I have a client that, might say, hey, how do I optimize, my charitable planning strategy? Or, I'm selling my business. What should I do? And, there's a really funny thing that I always tell these business owners. I say, look, the pre-transaction planning book is about that thick, and the post-transaction planning book's about that thick, right? And so you've got to engage professional advisors prior to any kind of transaction to try to maximize that. So Tom, to wrap that up, what I'm going to focus a lot on is different vehicles in the liquid markets that are tax advantaged. It's next level from tax loss harvesting, right? If you're working with a financial advisor.
So thank you. Let's talk
Yeah.
about tax loss harvesting, because
Sure.
every financial advisor I've ever talked to, they get all excited about tax loss harvesting. And I'm going, well, first of all, why are there losses in your portfolio? Because that's what you're harvesting. You're not harvesting gains, you're harvesting losses. So I can't get too excited about it, but you do have to do it. So kind of walk us through what you mean by tax loss harvesting.
Well, in fairness, every stock we pick isn't a winner, right? We joke that our business is more about slugging average than batting average. You want to avoid sort of the crowded trade, right? And you want to make sure that you're at least overweighted the area that's probably going to do better. And you're trying to eke out a meaningful return, hopefully above the market return net of fees. But along the way, we believe that it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep, right? And you've got to be focused on that tax loss harvesting. So tax loss harvesting, in the most simple example that I can give you is, let's say that we have a belief that, home improvement is going to be a good area to be in. And we look at Lowe's and we look at Home Depot and we say, you know what, we're going to bet on Home Depot. And maybe in the first couple of months we get it wrong and Home Depot goes down. Even if it doesn't go down a lot, maybe it goes down a little bit. A good advisor might swap out of Home Depot and go into Lowe's for 31 days to avoid the wash sale rules, capture that loss, and then, go back into Home Depot if that's your higher conviction name, right? That's the simplest term, but it gets a little bit more deep than that. So Tom, you talked about structures, legal and tax structures. There's also different investment structures, right? And some of the same, LLCs, partnerships, things you can invest in as a passive investor. But there's also more basic structures. I think everyone on the call has probably heard of a mutual fund. Everyone's heard of an ETF. And you may not have heard this term, but it'll make sense. Separately managed accounts. Okay. So mutual funds are pooled investment vehicles. It's a great way for typically a retail investor to get diversification. The problem with mutual funds is they're required every single year to distribute some part of their net gain and oftentimes income. And so you're really just capturing taxes every year, and you can't really effectuate the underlying holdings because you're in a pooled investment vehicle, right? And so, along comes ETFs. Well, ETFs are a lower cost option to mutual funds. And the benefit of an ETF is that the gain can just keep getting deferred into the future. Well, for some clients, that can turn into a little bit of a roach motel. You can check in, but you can't check out. And it could ultimately keep you from rebalancing at some point. Maybe you've gotten a little out over your skis and you have too much in equities, but you're afraid to trim that ETF position because you're going to realize that capital gain. And I see this huge problem with wealthy people. They've outgrown their current investment strategy and they come to me with a lot of ETFs, and it's really hard to rip the Band-Aid off. And we oftentimes don't want to do that. We want to try to build around it. So wealthy people, from a structural standpoint, they prefer separately managed accounts. They tend to be lower cost. You own the individual securities in your name, and you can do this individual security level tax trading. And it's like, well, why wouldn't everybody do that? Well, the problem is, and I'm just giving you one example, our minimum for just our US equity large cap strategy is 250,000. And so for me to get separately managed accounts for a client, you're looking at least probably $1.5 million minimum for me to adequately diversify across all these separately managed accounts. But there's some areas that are more impactful than others. So the first place that you should try to do a separately managed account is probably your large cap US equities, right? It's typically your largest position in a portfolio if you're a moderate to moderately aggressive investor or aggressive investor. And so it's not just tax loss harvesting. It's like you said earlier, Tom, a lot of my peers Well, at the end of the year, say, oh, we need to do our year-end tax planning, right? And the year-end tax planning is, okay, I have to sell some of this, I got to sell some of that. You really need to do it every single day. Every single trade that you make or your advisor makes needs to take into consideration taxes, but not let the tax tail wag the dog. Like you said, Tom, I agree with that.
Right. But this is a good point, because with tax losses from the stock market, they're capital losses. And whether they're short-term or long-term, they can only offset capital gain. They can't offset your ordinary income. They can't offset your wages, your business income, anything else. They can only offset capital gains. So you do need to, the good news is they carry over forever, so you never lose them. But that's where that tax loss harvesting can be so important, and why you want to do it on a daily basis. Because what I see a lot of, Corey, is also people come to the end of the year, but everybody's coming at the end of the year, and they actually drive the price down because everybody's selling and nobody's buying. And so what you end up with is not a tax loss, but a real loss that is just exacerbated because you did your tax loss harvesting the wrong time. And so this is where I think your point, where you've got to be looking at this all the time, where the separately managed account makes sense. You're looking at it all the time, because if you wait till the end of the year, you might actually cause a loss because you're doing it at the end of the year, as opposed to doing it all throughout the year.
That's true. You know, December, a lot of people think October is the worst month of the year because we've had several major crashes in October. October is actually a decent month. You know, December can be a train wreck sometimes. And they're one of the most common, I don't want to call it an imbalance, but it's one of the most known things that happens is the January effect. So a lot of people that have sold in December, you know, they go back and repurchase securities in January. So January tends to be a pretty strong month to invest, because people are going back into the market because 31 days has passed, or they're reallocating cash, and then they spent the holidays not thinking about their investments, and then they come back in January and they repurchase, right? So there's a lot of that does happen. You're right, Tom. You know, and there are some things in the liquid markets that can complement, you know, a business owner. And, you know, we're going to talk a lot more about this in July, right? There's way too much to cover in the remaining 15 minutes that I've got, but there's probably 30 vehicles out there, and some of this is fairly new. You know, as a business owner, I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's say, you know, you sell your company and you're still holding on to the real estate because the buyer is leasing it back from you. So you own the building and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm really done. I'm retired. I don't really want to operate this building anymore, excuse me. And you're like, I want to sell it, but I've depleted the basis down to zero, and I don't really know what to do with it. You know, I'm sure Tom could talk to you all day long about 1031 exchanges. The problem is you've got to roll that into another operating piece of real estate, you know, that you're going to be responsible for. And we have some clients that say, you know, I'm really done. And most people aren't aware that there are 1031 exchange funds that you can go into. They're $1 million minimum. Okay. So that's you know, there's a meaningful price tag to get into it. But up until a couple of months ago, it was a terminating transaction. So if you went into this fund, you know, you're in it for 2.5 years roughly, and then it converts into a public REIT. And now you can sell pieces of it off over time. You're getting a guaranteed income over that 2.5-year period of about 4.5%. So you're earning yield. But as of a couple of months ago, they actually started allowing you to roll out of that. Okay, so now I'm a real estate investor that wants to be active in real estate, but for whatever reason, the market's weird, you know, interest rates are high, whatever it is, I can't find
I need a place to
qualified
park
replacement property. I need a place to park it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And then I see something that I like and I can roll out of this fund and I get to defer that gain. And guys, there's not a lot of ways to eliminate gain. Okay. You know, you can die and get a step up in basis, which is a really big deal. We're going to talk a lot about that and how to leverage that in July. You know, there's a strategy that a lot of really wealthy people use called buy, borrow, die, right? You know, I'm going to borrow.
Yes, you can read all about it in Tax Free Wealth, where it first came out in 2012.
There you go.
Just saying.
And that's right. Just saying. You know, so you can get a step up in basis that way. You can give it to charity. Life insurance can give you a death-free, or pardon me, tax. Hopefully, not, it'd be nice if it was death-free benefit, right? But a tax-free benefit. And so, we're going to talk about some of that. And these folks might want to defer that gain in that piece of real estate, depending on their age. The other really neat thing about this is, when you gift a piece of real estate to charity, I'm just giving you a little preview, but when you gift a piece of real estate to charity, your charitable deduction is limited to basis. When you use this 1031 exchange fund and you convert it into shares in a public security, now you can deduct the fair market value for charitable purposes. And, that's something that a few of my clients have taken advantage of because they can actually get a big charitable deduction. And so we're going to go through a slew of these vehicles that are available. Another one, final one, just along the lines of what you just asked me, Tom, is, there are hedge funds out there, and I'm not a big fan of hedge funds. I don't really have any of my clients in hedge funds except this one. There's a hedge fund out there that is now a tax loss harvesting hedge fund. And every single year,
I'm familiar with that.
It generates about 18 to 22% in capital losses. About 3 to 4% of that is ordinary loss. Can't offset earned income, but it can offset ordinary income actually. And it can deplete below basis. Now, the problem is if you're going to sell your company in December, it's too late to implement that. You need to get that in place years in advance, or at least in January of that current tax year, because you need to build up those capital losses so that you can offset the gain in the future. And again, minimum price tag for that's $1 million from an investment perspective. So a lot of these things are limited to qualified purchasers, which are individuals with greater than 5 million net worth. Doesn't have to be liquid, right? It could be in your business.
So if you've ever wondered, why would I was golfing with a guy the other day and he goes, how come you're not retired yet? Right. I'm like, I'm 68. Okay. So most of the people I golf with my age are retired. And I said, well, I really like what I do and I make pretty good money. He says, well, what's enough money? And I'm going, here's an example. Corey just gave you a couple of examples where you don't have $1 million. You can't, the rich get richer because they have different access. So having that, it's not just, part of it is, yes, I want to, have the freedom that comes with more wealth. And I want to have all those things, but you also have more access when you have those bigger numbers, right? I mean, there are things, my clients and I have access to that a lot of people don't, just as you're talking about. I want to finish up with one thing though, Corey. I want to talk about, and we haven't pre-talked about this, so I'm going to explain it. The difference between tax efficiency and tax effectiveness. So typically when you talk to a financial planner or investment advisor, they're talking about tax efficiency. In other words, if you sell a stock at a gain, you've got a loss to offset it. That means that it's efficient when I sell it because I'm not paying tax on the gain. Okay. Or I'm invested in a municipal bond. That's tax efficient because I'm not taxable on the investment. And that's where I think paper assets can be really good. We can really get tax efficient with it. Our next guest is, we're going to talk about tax effectiveness. Tax effective is where I can actually use the tax benefit from my investment to offset the income that I used to buy the investment. So I'm actually got a negative tax rate. I don't have a zero tax rate, which is tax efficiency, or a low tax rate, which is tax efficiency. I have a negative tax rate. So I actually get such a tax benefit from the investment that I'm actually not even paying tax on my business income, my ordinary income, even my W-2 income. That's where it gets, to me, that's where it gets exciting. And, we can do some of that. We can be tax effective. I mean, the best way to be tax effective in the paper asset market is a retirement plan, right? I mean, that's a tax effective investment because I'm actually taking the income I earned. I'm not being taxed on it because I'm putting it into a qualified plan. So, I mean, you've got to deal with a number of qualified plans.
Yeah,
Corey.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm a huge fan for entrepreneurs of looking at a cash balance pension plan. You need to be of a certain age to be able to save money, a significant amount of money. You need to have the right dynamics in terms of the employees. It works best when there's just one or a handful of owners and maybe a lot of non-highly compensated individuals that you can reward with a retirement plan. But you can put hundreds of thousands of dollars in these plans and it comes right off your top line. They're amazing. There's other things too. If you have net operating losses in your business, you could do a Roth IRA conversion with existing
Right.
retirement plan assets and not pay any tax on that Roth conversion. Now you've converted a tax deferred asset into a tax free asset. So retirement plans are great. I agree, Tom.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing about, I think about retirements. I actually like to use retirement plans for other kind of tax planning too. So for example, let's say that my income is too high to get my full qualified business income deduction. I use a retirement plan to reduce my income. So now I qualify for the qualified business income deduction, right? Or I'm going, look, I'm going to max out this plan. I want some of my employees to get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's something as simple as a simplified a SEP IRA, or whether it's something more complex like you're talking about a pension plan, right? But there's so much we can do with that. And here's the great thing about taxes in this country. Now, my friend Art Laffer would not call this the great thing about taxes. Art is the king of the flat tax. Okay, he invented the Laffer curve. He was Ronald Reagan's economic advisor, and he was on my podcast recently. And he loves the flat tax, but we don't have a flat tax. We have a graduated tax rate, which means that, and here's the key. Everybody, you're going to want to write this down. The key is that the first dollar I deduct comes off the highest rate. The first dollar I deduct comes off the highest rate. So you're talking to, let's say, Corey, you've got a business owner that makes $1 million a year. Okay.
Right.
Well, $300,000 of that's being taxed at 37%. Okay. After that, it goes down to 35%, 32%, right? And it keeps going down. The 24% keeps going, the tax rate goes down. But if I can get that top layer, that $300,000 into a pension plan, I'm getting a deduction at the 37% rate. But when I pull it out at an average rate. Plus, I can do tax planning when I pull it out because there may be other things I'm investing in. So I can do other tax planning when I pull it out. So I never used to be, Corey, I will admit, I used to go off against qualified plans all the time. I mean, people have heard me for years go off against qualified plans. But then I wrote the Win-Win Wealth Strategy. And in the next to last chapter, chapter 8 of the Win-Win Wealth Strategy, my seventh investment that the government will pay you make is a retirement plan. And I ran numbers. And the numbers are pretty good. They're not as good as real estate, oil and gas business, just like you say. They're not as good as those. But I'll tell you what, if you run out of those, they are a great place to go. So my point is there is good tax planning to do in the paper asset area. And that's why I'm excited, Corey, to have you. I know you're going to be both at our franchise conference as well as our entrepreneur conference, entrepreneur investor conference. This is tax strategies for high net worth investors. That is the conference. That's what it's about. And you heard Corey say, he's going to talk about what the rich do. Okay. Now, some of that stuff, you may not be there yet, but it's a worthy goal to be there, right? A lot of you are going to be there and you're going to go, hey, I never heard of that stuff. So I'm very excited to have you, Corey. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I learned all sorts of new stuff tonight myself, and I love that. And we're going to bring on, and I'd like you to meet him, Corey, because you'll meet him at our conference. This is John Engel. And John, I want you to know that Corey, who's a paper asset guy, was just extolling the tax benefits of oil and gas. So you know,
I teed you up.
that's
Thanks,
what
Corey.
John does.
Good to
So
meet
John's
you.
our oil and gas guy, and Corey, we'll let you go from the screen now, and we're going to turn to oil and gas. But John will be with us on the 24th of July. So, John, good to have you.
Good to see you, Tom. How are you?
I'm great. I'm always glad to be talking about oil because, you know, I've been an investor in oil and gas for 40 years. And it's one of those things that we talked earlier, John, about getting educated. And I'd say of all the asset classes, the one you have to be most educated is oil. Can you give a little of your background, but then tell us why what are the dangers? And I know you don't like talking about the dangers of oil and gas, but I'm going to press you on this. There are dangers of investing in oil and gas. If you would give us a little of your background, but then let's talk about some of the dangers of oil and gas.
Yes, thank you. So just briefly, I've been with Gulf Coast Western since 2009 and have been COO of the company since 2017. Before 2018 and getting to the risk part of it, we did almost exclusively what's called exploratory drilling or wildcatting, if you've ever heard that term. In wildcatting or exploratory drilling, you might have a 30% success rate of hitting oil. That does not mean your well is going to be commercially productive. So we had maybe that good of success, if you want to even call it success. The risk of drilling a dry hole is real. You can have a great geologist and great engineers, and they can tell you where they think the best spot in the world to drill is. But ultimately, you have to poke a hole in the ground and drill down to that reservoir to see what's there. And that is the risk part of it. And that's part of why, and I'm sure you'll get into it, but that's part of why the United States tax code allows for tax deductibility. If you're going to develop our natural resources, they are going to reward you for taking that risk in the form of tax advantages. Now, since 2018, we have drilled almost exclusively in proven areas of known production with some of the biggest operators in the world. We only drill horizontally, and we only do multi-well projects because any one well might outperform all the others, and one well might be a significant underperformer. We balance those out and we mitigate those risks because they are absolutely real. Now what we run into as far as risk is the risk of Mother Nature giving, the risk of a dry hole has been mitigated significantly, but it's really going to be down to commodity pricing, and as we've seen recently, in a big way, and how much is Mother Nature going to give us? So it's really through diversification with numbers of wells in a particular project, we've mitigated those risks associated with one well. It also matters a lot who you're doing business with on the side of the
Thank you.
operator.
I actually think that is the biggest risk in the oil industry. It's a big risk in every industry. Don't get me wrong. It's a big risk in real estate. We saw a lot of people lose a lot of money in 2022, 2023, because the wrong people, or maybe the good people, made bad decisions. That too. Certainly we had a Federal Reserve that was unkind to the real estate industry, but there were some that just made really bad decisions. So you got to get with the right people. We've been talking about team all night, John. And I think of all industries that you're going to invest in, the riskiest one when it comes to a team is oil and gas. And I think it's just the nature of the beast that you have, it's the Wild West.
It is.
And the oil and gas is the Wild West. And you have people that will promote something that isn't there. There's no there. And you know those people, don't you, John?
Yes, I do. I know them well, and I don't talk to them anymore.
Exactly. But how do you know? Right. And so that's why I think it's important that you actually know who you're talking to, and you actually do. I think in oil and gas, more than anything else, you've got to do your due diligence, right? I mean, if I'm going in and buying a CPA firm, I know what I'm getting into. I don't have to worry about that. I do my due diligence, but I know what I'm doing, right? But I invested in an oil well. I don't know if the drilling company's good. I don't know if the engineer's good. I don't know that there's actually a well there. I mean, there's so many things I don't know. And so I've always thought that the team is the most important part of any investment. It's way more important than the investment itself. If I have a good team in oil and gas, I'm going to be a lot more successful than I have a bad team. But the same thing is true in real estate, business, et cetera. So same thing is true in the stock market, is that if I have a good team, I'm going to be better. So I think those are the big risks of oil. You mentioned them. I mean, you can get water in the well. I mean, you talked about exploratory. I invested in a well once, and the oil was there. It was a great reserve. Couldn't get through the bedrock. Just couldn't get through the bedrock. Mm-hmm. So it was worthless. I mean, it would have made me very, very wealthy, but we couldn't get through the bedrock. So with the developmental wells, these are proven horizontal, meaning you're doing the fracking right, and you're going. And how far out do you go?
These wells today can go out to 4 miles laterally through the formation. So amazing. From a surface area of maybe 10 acres, a 10-acre pad on the surface can cover up to 8 square miles underground of reservoir. It's amazing. That's amazing. So to your point about who the operators are, that's, not only have we mitigated the risk from a number of wells and miles of pipe in the oil, we only deal with the top operators in the country. Most of them are big public companies, and if they're private companies, they are very well private equity backed into the billions. So, or we won't do business with them, because I'm able to rely on their expertise and their teams of engineers and geologists. And I haven't had to talk to a geologist since 2018, and we haven't drilled a dry hole since 2018. So I'm going to stick with what we're doing.
I like it. So we can get into the tax benefits a little bit. We'll certainly get into those in detail in Park City in July. But I want to talk about what's been going on in the oil industry in the last 6 months, because it's been a wild ride. And we had oil up near $200 a barrel, and we've had it, and recently it's been down in the 60s. So, of course, the price of oil makes a big difference and how much money you make. I have a couple of questions for you that I think probably some of our listeners might have too. First question is, what is the bottom price of oil that you have to have in order in the U.S. typically to make money on a horizontal well? Okay,
that's a great question. The price, you'll see a lot of public companies disclose, they need a $35 or a $40 price point to make money based on what it costs to drill the well versus getting the oil out of the ground when it's all said and done. Now, number one, these horizontal wells will run for 15 to 20 years, depending on where they are. The important factor is that the way I look at oil wells is it has to operate at an efficient manner, and it have to be able to send out revenue checks. Those revenue checks have to outweigh the operational costs. So to put that in perspective, back during COVID, when oil prices went to $8, we were still sending out revenue distributions on those wells. The best thing about the oil pricing is that no matter where it is, it isn't going to stay there. In the last year or so, we've been range bound between about $55 and $85, and that's with war in Ukraine and all of those things, and war in Israel. All of those factored in, and we still stayed within a $55 to $85 price point. Since the Iran war, obviously, like you were just mentioning, it's gone up to $120, $125, $130. and then it's come back down. You know, it rockets up and then it floats like a feather back down. It is now we're back in the $70 range, and I think we'll stay in this range. This from a $65 to $90 price point going forward, because even if the Strait of Hormuz opens up completely tomorrow, it still takes time to get 8,000 oil tankers filled up and traversing the oceans and getting them back to where they need to go.
Well, and the reality is the spot price of oil is the oil future, right? It's not oil today. It's an oil future, which is why, and maybe you can explain, if you don't mind explaining this to people, why aren't the prices at the gas pumps coming down?
Because of that same thing I was just talking about it. And so it is kind of, it's not counterintuitive. It's just most of your gas stations are mom and pop gas stations, and the gas that they have in their tanks is gas that they already purchased. So they're pricing it based when gas prices shoot through the roof, right? They're looking at what they're going to have to be buying it at in the future. So their prices go up because they're going to have to be able to buy that next load of oil or next load of gas to refill their tanks and have to sell it at the higher prices. That's just how it works. Luckily, I mean, we're on the upstream side of things, not the downstream side or the product side of things. But, you know, again, the prices, when they see oil prices skyrocketing, they're adjusting their prices up as fast as possible. And they always seem to come down very slowly.
Right. What's really interesting is they sold the gas that they bought at $60 a barrel at 120.
Right.
Okay. When everybody saw the prices going up, they immediately raised their prices. Right. Yeah. They don't float up. They float down. Right. So they rocket up and they float down. I think that's a good way to look at it. And that's what's going on. The nice thing is, if you are an oil investor, and I'm not recommending oil for anybody, I am absolutely, what we want to do in our conference in July is give you the options, let you know what Uncle Sam is promoting right now, right? If this conference had been in 2023, we'd have been talking about solar.
Yep.
We'd have been talking about solar, not oil. We'd have been really focused on solar because solar was huge in 2023. We had huge tax benefits, so much so that it just made the returns fantastic.
Yeah.
On solar, because the government was paying for 2/3 the cost of the equipment.
Yeah.
So it brings the cost way down when the government's picking up 2/3 of the bill. Now, oil, what's really interesting to me is that, you know, people have been afraid that, hey, what about the next administration? I mean, this administration obviously very pro oil, which doesn't always help the oil price.
No, it doesn't.
You know, Trump's pretty much a drill baby drill guy. And so if you're a drill baby drill, that brings prices down, not up. So it doesn't make it better for oil prices. What makes it better is when you have Joe Biden who says, oil's bad for the climate. It's bad for the universe, and prices went way up.
Yep.
Under Biden. So it's really a contrary thing. And one of the things I like about being invested in oil is that I can go to the gas pump and I'm going, good, it's high. This is going to show up.
It feels good.
It's going to show up in my distributions, right? Yep. That is high right now. Or I go to the gas pump, my distributions come down. I'm going, good. That means that when I go to the gas pump, it's low. So it's a bit of a hedge, actually, from that standpoint. But let's talk a little bit about some of the. I'll let you explain them. I know them pretty well inside out. But let's talk about some of the basic tax benefits. Let's start with the drilling costs, and if you would explain what goes into drilling a well.
Yeah. So the first one you mentioned, intangible drilling costs, that is one of the main tax advantages associated with oil and gas, and that is intangible, meaning all of the costs that are sunk into when they drill an oil well, or in these cases, oil wells from a pad. They're literally going out and building, I like to explain it like they're building a small city around a bunch of holes in the ground. And that city does not leave until these wells are online. So the first stage is to clear the pad. And then you go in and they'll take a small rig and drill and set the conductor casing. After that rig moves off, a bigger rig comes in and drills down through the water table and sets casing. It's called the surface casing, down through the water table, cements it in place so that your underground aquifers are protected. So there's no contamination, there's no communication with your water table. And from there, they drill the rest of the wells. And they will drill, a well that's 1.5 miles deep with a 2-mile lateral, has about 18,000 to 19,000 feet of pipe in the ground at any given, when it's all said and done. And they'll drill those wells in about 8 days, and they'll drill multiple wells from one pad. And the rig actually moves back and forth between the actual wells as they're drilling each stage of that pad. Then that pad, once the wells are drilled, that crew moves off location. They completely disassemble the rig, move it off location, and that's when the completion crew comes in, and they go in and they pop holes. They perforate the pipe that's left over from the drilling process. They perforate those pipes so that now you have communication with your reservoir that you just drilled into, and then they will fracture stimulate it. They'll inject high pressure water and sand into those holes and out into the formation. The high pressure water is what opens up the rock so that the oil and gas can flow through. And then they pull that water off, and the sand that's in the slurry stays in the cracks and holds them open so that your oil and gas can flow through. That entire process, from the bulldozer showing up to when the wells go online, all of the processes themselves, that is your intangible. So all of those crews who work 24/7 to get those wells online for a 2-month period, those are your intangible drilling costs. You also have tangible drilling costs. You have intangible completion costs. So all of those, for the most part, you get to write off approximately 85% of that amount in the year that you make that investment. And that's what's so attractive, is that, again, the government wants you to go out and develop our own natural resources, and they're rewarding you by taking that risk, whether it's a dry hole exploring for oil, or if it's the best horizontal well a company's ever drilled. You still get the same tax benefits either way. So we look for the good wells to take advantage of the tax advantages on the front end. And then on the back end, you get a depletion allowance, because the oil's not going to last forever. The government gives you up to a 15% depletion allowance on the revenues generated by the wells on the back end. So you have multiple tax advantages, most of which can be taken in the year that you invest in the oil wells themselves.
Yeah, so it's a little wild when you think about it. In real estate, as an example, or business, you get a deduction for the money you put in, and you're taxed on the money you get out. In oil, you get a deduction for the money you put in, and you're taxed on 85% of the money you pull out.
That's right.
You're not taxed on 100%. It doesn't even matter if you've pulled out all of your costs. There's no limit on the 15%. So you're just taxed on 85%. It's a little bit like the qualified business income deduction, where if you're in business, you only pay tax on 80% of your income. In this case, this is like that, only this is with oil, where you're taxed on 85% of your income.
Right.
Real estate, paper assets, you're pretty much taxed on 100% of your income. So that is one of the advantages. Now, in order to get that deduction up front, we have to be very careful. I'm going to save that. I'm going to hold off until July 24th for that discussion. And we'll talk about exactly what you have to do, because I have seen too many people make the mistake of how they owned. We talked about structure from the beginning, and how you structure that ownership makes a bigger difference in oil and gas than just about any other investment. And if you don't own it right, you could lose really a big portion of your benefit, or at least postpone a big portion of your benefit to later years. Whereas if you do it right, oil and gas has a provision in it that allows you to escape the passive loss rules. that no other investment has. It is a specific exception for oil and gas, as long as you structure it right, and we'll get to that structure in July. But John, what else are you going to talk about when you come see us in Park City?
Well, we have a lot of exciting things going on in Colorado, so I'll be able to speak to that. We're directly partnered with some of the biggest names in the industry, which is a testament to our business track record up there. It doesn't normally happen where we're able to form essentially joint ventures with some of the biggest names in the energy sector. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how, in more detail on how we mitigated those risks, and then how we protect our partners through multiple layers of insurance, how the whole process works, and how it again, this is, when you compare it to real estate, it's very similar in a lot of ways. The best thing I like about our direct joint ventures is that when your oil wells are producing revenues, this is something where it's not like the stock market where you have to sell your asset to get the actual money. We direct deposit the revenues directly into our partners' bank accounts on a monthly basis, every month by the 20th, like clockwork, once those wells are in production. So it is a cash flow generating asset that has tax advantages on the front end and the back end. So I'm looking forward to explaining it to everybody.
Awesome. And like I said, I think oil is the area people get very excited because of the tax benefits. And I always tell them, whoa, slow down, because I will honestly say I've seen more people lose money in oil than any other investment. And it's just, most of the time it comes down to the team. It just comes down to the team. I mean, do you have a tax advisor who understands oil and gas? I can tell you, for a long time, I could have told you I was the only tax advisor in Arizona who'd ever done any oil and gas, right? Went to school in Texas, started my career in Utah. I mean, I come out of the oil and gas areas of the country, but there still aren't that many. And so you really do have to understand the tax rules for it. And you've really got to have that team around you. So John, really appreciate you coming to join with us in Park City next month. And I know you're going to be there for a whole week, and we appreciate you coming for a whole week. The conference we're talking about is one day, but we've got other conferences that John's going to be involved with too, and with other groups. So it's just great having you,
up into that mountain air.
There you go. That clean mountain air. It is clean mountain. It is beautiful, beautiful mountain air. So thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you then.
We'll see you. Okay. So, honestly, hopefully you've learned a ton, and I'm sure you've taken a lot of notes, and you can try to run this alone. Or you can spend one day with us where the plan actually gets built. That's July 24th in Park City, Utah. Park City is one of the most beautiful places on earth. We purposely are having it on Friday so that you can come in and spend the weekend. Okay. Bring your spouse. There is never an extra charge when you bring your spouse. Okay. So we have always, anything we do at Wealthability or TFW Advisors, you bring your spouse is free. We want you to be there with your spouse. So here's the thing. Remember, there's 3 problems we talked about. The 3 problems are, if you go back to it, we have treating taxes like a bill instead of like a map. That's number 1. Number 2 is the belief. Okay. And number 3 is who's driving the car. You noticed with each of the people, John and Corey and David, that I really emphasized the team. We will emphasize that even more. I'm actually going to present to you my team, not just my tax team, but my life insurance team, you've met my oil team, my financial team, investment advisor team, my real estate team. I'm going to introduce you to my people. Okay. I think perhaps that's one of the greatest things that you're going to get that you can't get on a webinar. Cause you can take their names down, but I'm going to give you their phone numbers. Okay. I'm going to actually connect you with them if you want to be connected. So the morning session really is the roadmap applied to your situation, structure, incentives, where you're leaving money on the table. Okay. We're going to solve problems 1 and 2. The afternoon session, implementation, entity structure, building the team, next steps. We're going to fix problem 3. As I mentioned, there are 3 questions to any good tax strategy that you have to answer. The first question is, how do you make your money? The second question is, what are you going to do with your money? And the third question is, what are you going to do with your money when you die? We're going to focus very heavily on the second question, because in my experience, 90% of your tax opportunities, your tax saving opportunities are question number 2. What are you going to do with your money? And it's also the most difficult thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a high net worth employee, high paid employee, you're a successful investor. A lot of the question is, okay, what do I do with my money to pay less tax and build more wealth? What do I do with that money? And that's what we're going to focus on in Park City on July 24th. So we're going to have in the room, we're going to have entrepreneurs, investors like you, your level. You heard Corey. Okay. He doesn't take anybody that's not worth $5 million. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be worth $5 million to come. Okay. But remember, this is a class for high net worth investors, which means that either you are a high net worth investor or you plan on being a high net worth investor. If you're one of those 2, then this is probably the right place for you to be. On top of that, we're going to have myself and my people. So we'll have our tax advisors in the room. They're going to be there on purpose. We made our conference for our franchisees, our annual conference is the day before. That's on purpose. Why? So that they can be there to actually answer your questions at your table. They can actually be the one you go to. They know this stuff. I train them on this stuff all the time. We get together at least once a month and train on this. Okay. On top of that, you'll have the rest of my team, the attorneys, the financial planners, the life insurance people, the real estate people, the business, the business professionals. We're going to have all those people. And that is so that you can actually do something. It's one thing to learn it and get educated. We've talked about that. So important. But it's even more important if you have the people around you that you can trust, the people who actually know what they're doing. And these are people, I'm being frank with you, these are my people. Okay. I'm not bringing you people who might know something, okay, or that paid me some fee to come. I'm bringing you the people I use. Okay. So I think this is going to be really cool. We've never done this before, and we will never do it again. This is a one-time only, one day only. So don't think, well, I'll go next year. It's not going to be there next year. We're not going to do it next year. It is a big undertaking. We're doing it this year. There is a need for it this year, where we have a window of opportunity in the world right now. You have a window of opportunity. We have oil in investing, which has not been this good in a long time. We have the stock market, which is being boosted with all the technology and AI. We have real estate that is on sale right now, as you'll learn from my friend Adrian Lifshanowski. Real estate's on sale right now. If you got into real estate in 2021, 2022, you lost money, now it's time to get back in. Okay. It may be perfect for you if you like real estate. But again, I am agnostic when it comes to asset class. I'm completely agnostic. In fact, I'm a firm believer that you should choose one asset class and focus on that asset class. And that's where you should put your attention. It's like Corey said and David said, you really have to get good at what you do. You get really good at what you do. You lower your risk, you increase your return, and you lower your taxes and increase your control. So here's the thing. When you build the plan with the map open and you're looking at the map, the activities that lower taxes, you find, are the activities that build wealth. And it doesn't matter which asset class. And we'll help you. One thing you'll get here is you get an idea of, okay, which asset class should I be in? A lot of you don't know. That's actually, I find the hardest thing for people to do is decide on the asset class. You're going to see all of them. You're going to see experts in all of them who make money in all of them. Okay. And you're going to have the opportunity to actually get to know these people. So you're going to lower your taxes while building your wealth. And you're going to walk out of July 24th with 5 months left to execute. You're not going to wait until November, October, November, December. You're going to do it in July. This is the time. That's the entire point of the timing of this conference. So here's the thing. The tax law, 2025 tax law, turns a year old on July 4th. President Trump signed it July 4th, 2025. It turns a year old on July 4th of 2026. Most business owners haven't captured even $1 of it. 6 months are left in 2026. Every week of waiting burns the runway and you never get that time back. Let me emphasize this. Every dollar you make is either taxable or not. Every dollar you spend is either deductible or not. So every time you make money or spend money, you could have a positive or a negative tax impact. So every day you wait, you're giving up taxes. Every day you wait, you're giving up taxes. Now, here's the thing. The event's 4 weeks out. The room size is limited. So we're mostly sold. We have some spots available. We saved them for this webinar. Okay. And here's great news. For most of you, this webinar, this event is going to be deductible, including the travel. And we're going to show you, I'm going to spend time specifically on making sure that this event is deductible for you. Because wouldn't it be great if the government paid a third or a fourth or a third, or even 40% of the cost of this event for you? Now, it's not very expensive in the first place, but here's the thing. You have three options. You can do it yourself. I think do it yourself are the three most expensive words in the English language. You can read the 7,000 pages of tax law plus the IRS guidance still rolling out and hope you get it right by December. You can do nothing. You can write the same check next April that you wrote last April. So on $5,000, $100,000 of income, you might be overpaying by 10, 15, 20, 30%, $50,000 to $75,000 again. Or you spend a day in Park City with me and my friends. They're my buddies. I'll admit, these are my buddies. And you leave with a plan. Now, here's what we got. You get a full day live with me and my advisory team. That is easily a $10,000 benefit. Easily $10,000. For me alone, it would be way more than $10,000. I guarantee you, if we were one-on-one. One conversation is going to pay for your ticket 10 times over. On top of that, we're going to give you, just for those of you who do this now, we're going to give you a recording of the 3-day tax strategy conference for tax professionals that we're doing earlier in the week. Now, you're not allowed to come to it. Only CPAs, tax advisors can come to that 3-day training. Okay. Please do not try to get in the door. We will kick you out. Okay. We made this day just for entrepreneurs and investors. So this is your day, but you're going to get to see behind the scenes what your CPA could have been learning. or what your CPA was learning if your CPA is actually there. Okay. So that just being able to see that's easily $1,000 financial benefit. This is the training that the advisors themselves pay for, and you're going to get it as a bonus to your to your day, on the 24th of July. On top of that, we're going to give you our tax-free formula course, access to our tax-free formula course. This is an online course. It's 8 hours of, I think it's the best course I've ever done. And it's 8 hours of high level, simple tax instruction. It's meant for you. It's not meant for the CPAs. It's not meant for tax advisors. It is meant for you. And it is a spectacular course. We're going to give that to you. $497. On top of that, what you're going to get out of this day, by being with other entrepreneurs, by being with our tax professionals, by being with my team, you're going to have the confidence to actually implement this. Now, in my mind, that's priceless, but at minimum should be worth $30,000 to $80,000 to you just this year. Okay. The event materials, next step resources, another $1,000, the difference between knowing and doing. So the total, not counting the confidence, $12,500. One mid-size strategy or tactic implemented before December pays for any of these several times over. Your investment is not $12,500. It's not $5,000. It's not even $3,000. The strategy pass is $1,497. The conference pass is $997, and the elite, a full year of access, is $2,997. And if you buy from this room in the next 72 hours, code webinar takes 30% off any of the three. I can't believe we're giving this away like this. Okay. So the strategy pass drops to $1,048. The conference pass drops to $698, and the elite pass drops to $2,098. That code dies Sunday at midnight, and it only exists here. Okay. I'm going to tell you honestly, this is the first time I didn't even know that we were doing this. I am thrilled we're doing it because I want that room packed. I want you there. This is going to change your life. Now look, the deadline, it's not my deadline. The calendar is the deadline. This year is running out fast. It's already 6 months gone. By the time July comes, it'll be 7 months gone. Don't wait another day. One day in beautiful Park City, downtown Park City, you're going to have an opportunity. Bring your spouse, please. Your spouse is free. Bring your spouse with you, and come. Tell your friends about it. And remember, the code webinar closes Sunday at midnight. After that, the passes go back to full price, and the only way back to 30% is not to have waited. So that 30% off is gone after Sunday. So do it now. And so let's go to questions we've got.
All right, Tom, thank you for the time that you've already spent with us on a Tuesday. The first question, and I think a lot of people are wondering, what conversation should you bring up with your spouse about the event? If how do you have that conversation? Like, hey, I'm watching this tax guy online, and I'm really interested in this. I think that we should do this as a couple, but I would love to hear how you would have that conversation.
Yeah. So here's my experience, and it's personal experience. So my first wife was not interested at all. She had no interest, and frequently we had challenging conversations about money. Now, my current wife, I'll admit, yep, 2 wives. My current wife, we talk about finances together every day. She will be there with me. what happens is do you want to be on board with your spouse? And what you do is say, hey, look, honey, we need to do this together. I can't do this alone. We should need to do it together. Let's spend the weekend in Park City. It's beautiful in July. It's not hot. It's fabulous. It's up in the mountains. The air is clean. Lots to do. Great food. Great restaurants. Let's check it out. So, in ways, a tax deductible vacation, at least to an extent. Okay, we'll talk about that on the 24th. But I would really emphasize that when I see spouses do it together, they are far more successful than if one of you does it apart. Here's the challenge. You're going to go to this event. You're going to get your head full of all these great ideas. Your spouse isn't there. You come home, you tell your spouse about these great ideas. And your spouse goes, oh, no, that's not true. That's too aggressive. There's no way that's going to happen. I guarantee you it will happen. I guarantee you. It happens more often than not. Now, that doesn't mean if your spouse can't come, you don't want to come. It's better than not having your spouse. It's not better than not coming at all. But it is, I think, 5 times better to have your spouse with you. And it's no more expensive. Okay, you pay for their plane ticket. Hotel room's no more expensive. You just pay for their plane ticket, and the conference is free to them. So that's why I think you just say, look, let's be on the same page together. 85% of challenges in marriage are about money. Don't be one of the 85%. Okay, you get together, you won't have that issue.
All right. The next one is asking you to explain the different packages. Can you just go over and then who's the right person for which package?
Yeah, I can't see this. So
let me see. Well, so there's the conference pass, the strategy pass,
Right.
and the elite access pass. Can you just explain the differences for the people?
yeah, so the conference pass is basically you're getting the conference, right? I mean, this is like the minimum fee. You get the conference. You get to meet all my people. You still get my what we used to call a Rolodex. You still get my people. You still get access to them. You get all the education. So you get all of that. Okay. So that is the conference pass. That's the base pass, right? We're going to feed you great food, by the way. I'm going to tell you right now. The food at this hotel is spectacular. We had a different conference there last year, and I was so impressed with the food and the people there. So that's the conference pass. Okay. The strategy pass. Can you make this a little bit bigger, Josh? Thank you. Okay. First of all, you're going to get access to the tax-free formula. That right there is $497. So that pays for it. Okay. You're going to get a recording of the CPA tax conference. Okay. You're going to get additional post-event education, and you're going to see the entrepreneur and the advisor view of our strategy. Because so what we're doing for the CPAs is a very in-depth technical version of what we're doing for you. Okay. We're simplifying it for you. We don't want to overwhelm you. But you'll actually get, and by the way, it's webinar-EIC at checkout, not just webinar. It's webinar-EIC. Webinar-EIC is the code that you need to enter. That's the strategy. Okay. Yeah. Make it bigger again. And let's look at the elite. So you get everything in the strategy pass plus, okay, now this is cool. I didn't know about this. This is so cool. You get a year of Wealthability Live. Let me tell you about Wealthability Live. Wealthability Live is every month I do a webinar where it's question. I bring in an expert like one of these people that you met, John and Corey and David. I bring in an expert. We have a conversation about a topic, and then you get to ask your questions. That's Wealthability Live. That's every month. On top of that, we have Wealthability Online, which is we actually have a forum where you can ask questions. You can talk to other people like you. It's a chat basically. And I'm on it once a month, and we have a specific topic that I respond to your questions on that. 1 year Wealthability University. Oh my heavens. This is too good, Josh. I'm sorry. This is too good. Wealthability University is 24 courses. 24 courses. You can buy Wealthability University separately. It's $2,000. Okay. Wealthability Live is $197 a month. I'm going to give you actual prices. Okay. Wealthability Live is $197 a month. Wealthability University is $1,997. Okay. You're going to get a year of Wealthability Live, a year of Wealthability University. You're going to get private program access, not offered to the public, and the monthly ongoing education through Wealthability Live. So you're getting, like, even if you just take, okay, so 2,400 plus 2,000, that's $4,400, right? And that's for $1,500. So we're giving you a 60% discount on Wealthability Live and Wealthability University. This is the only place you can get that discount. We never discount Wealthability University ever. I'm going to have to talk to Josh about this, because we never discount Wealthability University. We are discounting Wealthability University just because we want you to have the most education, the most opportunity, the most connection with other people. See, here's one thing that I've learned. You'll come to a class like this. Excuse me. You'll come to a class like this and you'll get all excited. And then you go home and everybody around you is poo-pooing it. Okay. That's the technical term for it, right? They're bringing you down. You have all this energy that you got at this day, this conference, and they're bringing you down. But you know what? You get Wealthability Live, you're back with your people. You get Wealthability Online, you're back with your people. You go through Wealthability University, your people have already been through Wealthability University. So you're with a group that is as excited about it as you are. I think that is, I got to tell you, the $26.97 is an absolutely amazing value. That you're getting 30% off blows my mind that we're giving it away like this, but I'm good with it. And the reason is because the more people we have at the conference, the better the conference is. There'll be more energy. There's more networking going on. We learn more. I learn more. Okay. So I'm good with this. I would do it for free if I could. But obviously it costs money to put on a conference. And, but I'll tell you, the speakers, you've heard from 3 of them. The speakers are all that quality. There are going to be CPAs there to answer your questions. My team. Okay. That otherwise you'd be paying them $500, $600, $700 an hour to answer your questions. And they're going to be there for you at your table to answer your questions. Okay. They're volunteering their time. They're not getting paid for it. They're volunteering their time to help you. So whether it's the conference pass at $697, the strategy pass where you get tax-free formula and the recording, or whether you go all in with the elite access pass, whichever you do, just do it. Do it now. It's go to wealthability.net/sales page. Is the Wealthability really have a dash in it, Josh?
I don't know. This is just the link that we were given, but it must. Yeah, this is 100% the right link, and I just put it in the chat as well.
Okay, just double check. Okay, so don't go to wealthability.com because that's not this page. Okay, you got to go to wealthability.net. This is the page that we've got here for you. It's just for you. Nobody else sees this page. They go to wealthability.com. They're going to pay full price, and they're not going to get all these bonuses. Okay. They're not going to get a 30% off. they're not going to get that. So make sure you go to this particular page and enter in the code webinar-EIC.
What about for someone who's listening, thinking that this all sounds really good, everything that you're saying, but they don't know if they're advanced enough to take full advantage of it? So like, how should someone know if this is the right room for them?
You know, I'll tell you what, I've mentioned a couple of times, I like to golf. I always find I play better when I'm with players who are better than I am. Always. I play better. Same thing when I used to play tennis. I always preferred playing with somebody better than me. Why? Because I played better. I raised my game. You really, you know, the old story is your income is the average of the 6 people you spend the most time with. So spend your time with people, wealthier people. You want to build your wealth, spend your time with wealthy people. Okay. I promise it will be simple. Okay. I don't ever want to say anything that isn't simple that everybody couldn't understand. Okay. One of my favorite quotes is Albert Einstein. He said, any 6-year-old can explain something to a genius, but it takes a genius to explain something to a 6-year-old. I want it to be so simple, a 6-year-old can understand it. That doesn't mean it's going to be not hugely valuable. It's literally going to be the most valuable, but I think simple is harder. Making it simple is more difficult. We're going to make it simple. All of the speakers, I'm going to be on stage with them. Why is that? Because sometimes people are really good at their job, but they're not as good at making it simple. My job is to make it simple. So here's what I promise you. It will be simple. You will be able to understand it. Now, will it be a stretch for some of you? As far as what you're learning? Yeah. So are you willing to make the stretch? That's the question. For some of you, the price point's a stretch. Are you willing to make the stretch? I mean, at least Uncle Sam's going to contribute, but are you willing to make the stretch? That's the question. Are you willing to do that?
How should someone evaluate the potential ROI of implementing one of the strategies you guys are going to be talking about?
You know what? There won't be anybody who comes to this conference, and this is not a guarantee. Okay. I will tell you right now, there won't be anybody coming to this conference who doesn't get at least one strategy, one idea that saves them more taxes than they paid for the conference, no matter what level they're at. Okay. That's just the way we do things at Wealthability. We don't do things, a 10% return is not okay. You've got to get your money back, but you have to do it. So don't come up to me and say, "Hey, Tom, you guaranteed that I would get my money back from the government." No, I'm not guaranteeing that. You have to do it. If you're not willing to take action, don't come. I'm going to tell you right now, Josh hates that I'm saying that, but I'm saying it. If you're not willing to take action, don't come. If you think you already know everything, you probably wouldn't be on this webinar, but don't come. Okay. Don't bring somebody who's a naysayer. Okay. People are going to be there anxiously engaged. I'll give you a warning right now. I'm going to tell you to shut off your phone. The minute you sit down in that conference, I'm going to ask you to shut off your phone. Some of you aren't going to like it. If you don't want to shut off your phone for a day, don't come. If you want to be fully engaged, meet people that really care about building wealth, that really care about reducing their taxes and really care about other people, come. If those are the people you want to be around, join us. If they're not the people you want to be around, don't join us. But I'm going to tell you right now that I would be shocked if anybody actually implements what they listen to and their return on investment isn't in the multiple, 10x type level, but I'm not guaranteeing it. Okay. So don't come back to me on that.
There's a lot of people that are asking about the travel situation and not being able to be in Park City. Is there a virtual event for those people?
No, nope. Come. And here's why. I'll tell you why. We purposely did not do a virtual event. I cannot honestly tell you that you would get much value at all, because I don't think it's the education that is the highest value. I think it's being with the people and being in the environment. That's where the value is. Okay. So come, you know what? Take a leap. I get it. It's hard to travel. Okay. But there's plenty of there's plenty of room at the hotel. There's lots of hotels in Park City. You can stay in Salt Lake City. It's 25 minutes away. I mean, you're not going to be shut out of, a good place to stay, and it's not expensive. It's not at all expensive. So I would just tell you, I purposely did not do an online version. This is an online event. It's great. It's free. Okay. You want to really get value? Come join us. Be there in person, engage, be fully engaged, and be willing to share with other people. Then we're very happy to have you.
Can you just run us down what day the event is, and just so everyone can block it off their calendar?
It is Friday, July 24th. Now I'm going to tell you, July 24th is a holiday in Utah. So you need to book now. July 24th is a holiday in Utah. It is a state holiday. Okay. It's Pioneer Day, or as some people say, Pioneer Day, but it's Pioneer Day. So it is a holiday in Utah. So you need to book. Please book now. July 24th is kind of a big day. I used to say, I grew up in Salt Lake City, and I used to say, well, July 24th is a bigger deal in Salt Lake than the 4th of July is in Salt Lake. And it's actually true. July 24th is a bigger day than the 4th of July. So it's a holiday. So by the way, I guarantee you'll see fireworks that evening, and you'll get fireworks during the event from the speakers.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time today. The crowd was really thankful for you spending 2.5 hours with us. Now I know it's really late, so I'm excited for everyone to be at the event, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So looking forward to really the energy that will be there is going to be amazing. You will not regret it. You will not regret it. You will meet people that will. Some of you will meet people that will be friends for the rest of your life. You'll meet advisors that will make you a ton of money. Okay. And most of all, you're going to get educated, which is going to increase your returns, your control, reduce your risk, and most of all, reduce your taxes. Because as you reduce your taxes, you can build your wealth. We'll see y'all there in Park City, Utah, July 24th.